Zuckerberg laid out a 10-year master plan for the company with a goal to give everyone in the world the power to share anything they want with anyone. Facebook CEO highlighting a new version of the company's messenger platform, along with live video, virtual reality. Guys, there was so much to absorb, and so much promise, so much risk. Mike, what was the headline that you walked away with?
A lot of the stuff that Zuckerberg talked about yesterday, we kind of had an idea about already. We knew about the virtual reality platform they're doing. The augmented reality was a little bit new. I thought the most interesting part was, Zuckerberg essentially acts as a sort of statesman in these speeches right now. He's going to different countries and talking to prime ministers and presidents, and he uses this platform as like a global stage to say, this is our vision for the future, and, you can get on board with it or not.
Shelley, we heard from the spokesperson for the Trump campaign last hour who basically said Zuckerberg needs to get off his high horse and see how everyday Americans live.
You know what? I don't want to talk politics, but I will say the following. Mark Zuckerberg has a vision, and I think it's what's driving Facebook's value creation, and they relentlessly execute against it. They're there to connect everyone in the world, and he believes that, and the company executes against that vision, and it's that vision and their executional excellence that drives shareholder value. So Mr. Trump is entitled to his opinion about high horses, but it's the vision and the mission of Facebook that actually drive value creation for the company. So sorry, Donald, if you're a businessman, you got to respect that first.
There wasn't really any mention of some of the roadblocks in this plan, like free basics in India. Obviously, regulators aren't huge fans of that, but nonetheless, the strategic plan, Shelley, does seem big picture. They're going forward with it, and they're committed.
There were hidden gems in yesterday's announcement. The messenger platform and chatbots are a very serious future of the world. And by the way, if you look out to a 10-year horizon, which I think is a smart place to look because you don't know what's going to be there, what is a television set and what does it mean to have messaging between human beings? Is TV a $1 app in a VR or AR app store? What a great concept. Now, people are going to push back and go, that's crazy. Hey, a decade ago, there was no Facebook, so that was crazy.
Mike, the Washington Post this morning calls the chat bot economy akin to the fledgling app economy circa 2009. Is that overstating it?
No, I really like the analogy because I think what you're going to see initially is a bunch of really terrible bots. I don't know if you played around at all with any of them yesterday, but I played with one of the weather bots and it was awful. It took like 10 or 15 chats to get to it's not going to rain today. And the first versions, kind of like the first versions of the app economy, are all going to be awful. I think, again, next few years, a bunch of stuff will fizzle out. These companies feel like they have to build these bots, and then some bots will actually rise to the top and be very good. But I do think that this wave of bots is an inevitability.
And by the way, there's an important part of that. These are driven, for the most part, by machine learning and artificial intelligence, and where apps were created by humans who had to react to one another and find out what rose to the top. Chatbots are going to automatically become better or worse as they get used more or less. So we're coming into a whole other place. And yeah, Mike's right. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and yeah, they're going to be really bad.
Mike, it was pointed out 25 companies are already working with Messenger on bots, but no money has been exchanged. When does this become a viable business for Facebook?
Well, so Facebook is testing, I believe right now, this idea of like promoted messages inside of Facebook Messenger. So the idea, I think, long term is to get businesses to pay Facebook to be used as a sort of customer service channel. Maybe they'll find different ways of doing revenue. But I think, companies right now are they don't really care. They see Facebook scale and they realize they got to get on board immediately, and then, they'll figure out the money stuff later.
We're going to talk about this for a long time to come, guys. Next up, according to the Washington Post, the FBI paid professional hackers to crack the San Bernardino shooter's iPhone. The hackers reportedly found a flaw in the software, which helped the FBI break in without erasing all the data. The government now has to decide whether to disclose that flaw to Apple or keep it to themselves. Interesting piece. We're getting familiar with the terms white hats, meaning those who uncover flaws for the force of good, and gray hats, which these guys may be.
Maybe.
Shelley,
Yeah.
what do they do?
So here's the deal. This has never been a question. This case has never been a question about whether or not the phone could be hacked. It's a 5C. It could be hacked. Now, whether it is a flaw in the security system that no one had found before, or you just went in there with the way you know how to hack a 5C, the 5C could be hacked. The case was always about government overreach. Are we going to live in a society where the government can say to you, hey, we want to backdoor a metaphorical skeleton key to be built for a piece of encryption software, and once you build a skeleton key, metaphorical or otherwise, it can be copied, usually without the owner of the key's knowledge. We can't have that in this world. So to look at this one phone and go, should they share the secret with Apple or not? I don't care. It doesn't make a difference. The 5C is over. It doesn't make any difference. There have always been people who could hack that phone. The 6S or when the 7 comes out, and people, don't really want to have this conversation. We need to have this conversation. And they say, my personal information, I have nothing to hide. Yeah, you do. It's called your bank account. Encryption is for everybody. So that's the problem.
Mike, it might not be legally required for the government to tell Apple what exactly this flaw was, but what are the ethics around this? Because that seems to be the question that we're asking now.
Yeah. It's really interesting because a lot of the assumptions initially were, this particular phone kind of doesn't matter. The government's trying to sort of win this case with Apple to set a precedent so that in the future, when they have to come knocking for, any, God forbid, terrorist attacks or whatever, they'll be able to do that. Now, they were able to get these, white hat hackers, which essentially they hack to find flaws for good and then inform the companies. So the question is, are they going to, help Apple, or are they going to be able to use this flaw in the future to continue doing the same thing? Honestly, I don't know. This case has not been particularly amiable between Apple and the government, as you guys have seen it play out. So
in practice,
it's sort of like, how much goodwill did they burn?
No, but in practice, it's not ever going to matter. There have always been virtuoso hackers available to everyone. If you know who they are, you can pay them gray hat, black hat, or white hat, and they will do your bidding for money. That's what they do. Or if they're under certain stresses, like they're going to jail for the rest of their life unless they help the government. But in practice, Mike is right. This is not about that. This is about government overreach and what kind of world we want to live in. Should Apple share should the government share the flaw with Apple? Apple doesn't need them to do that. Neither does anybody else. It doesn't make a difference. That operating system is over, and we're not going to see phones manufactured that way ever again. So find a flaw in the iPhone 7.
You don't think there's a possibility that same flaw could exist in a similar form in a future phone?
You know what? Certainly no, not because new phones are built differently with Secure Enclave and a whole different mechanism for securing the phone. But again, this is more about encryption writ large, and there's always going to be somebody. It's an arms race. There's always going to be somebody who's better. Today the government's better. Tomorrow the bad guys are better. It's just going to go that way. But as long as it's a small group of virtuoso hackers, we're okay. When it's anybody, it scares me to death.
Yeah. Mike, did it surprise?
It's really embarrassing.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say the other thing, too, is, Apple, this all could have played out behind closed doors, but Apple chose to make it public, this fight with the government, and sort of take this principled stance. And now you have this direction where Apple looks kind of embarrassed because, there's a security flaw in the phone that they didn't really even, they had not found themselves, and now they're relying on the government to help them out.
Right.
So, PR-wise, it's not very good.
Yeah, no, there's a little crow eating there, but I was going to ask you whether or not people were surprised to see that this could be done, and in fact it could.
Well, I think everyone knew it could be done. Apple knew it could be done. Apple wasn't going to be one to do it, and yeah, it's very embarrassing. But most importantly, I keep going back to this, it takes our eye off the ball.
Right.
This is a conversation every business has to have with every single government official. We must have laws about this, and the technology is so far ahead of the legal system, we got to catch up. And the security of the whole building we're sitting in right now is based on encryption. We really can't have a flaw in that particular technology.
Don't worry, we'll get Congress on the case.
Please.
No worries. Shelley, Mike, thank you guys. Good to have you two together. Mike
Good to
Isaac
be
and
here.
Shelley Palmer.
Thanks for having me.